how did people feel about this particular article? I'm going to go for low-hanging fruit first. So what are people's thoughts on talking about thematic analysis and AI?
Hmm.
Or I can go back even a little bit further and talk about the fact that in this article, it talks about codes and themes, and people tend to mix these two things up, uh,
Mm.
saying that codes are themes and themes are codes. And I'm like, no, they're two different things. So just as a quick reminder, and I actually did this through Chat GPT. I was like, Chat GPT, tell me what the difference is between codes and themes to make sure that I was on the same page as Chat GPT. So what they said was codes are short labels or tags that represent specific pieces of data. These could be words, phrases, or even entire sections of data that captures a particular idea, concept, or pattern. And then it goes on to say that the purpose of codes is to organize and classify the data for further analysis. It helps researchers break down large volumes of qualitative data into manageable chunks. So I was like, okay, I'm with you, Chat GPT. Like, I get it. And then I was like, so tell me about themes. So that, they define themes as broader, more abstract patterns that emerge from the data after coding. They represent significant concepts or ideas that are repeatedly expressed through the data set. The purpose of a theme is that it helps researchers identify underlying meanings and patterns that explain the data as a whole. They provide a higher level of abstraction and interpretation. So I was like, okay, so here are my little codes. And then here is my big theme. It's like, and in my head, I'm thinking of it as maybe a forest. So here are the flowers and every type of flower and every type of tree and the grass, because if I'm going to think about this, I'm also thinking about the grass. And then the big overarching theme is the forest. So is everybody following me there, or am I just
That sounds good.
okay, great? Because then I can use that idea in my class whenever I teach qualitative research. So what are other people thinking about that?
I can give you an example of how I understand that from my own research. So for example, I'm looking into whether content creators kind of achieve social mobility through content creation or not. So I look at social mobility as my theme, and my codes would be a new house or new furniture, or I don't know, like something along that line, like, oh, some type of upgrade in their life, new clothes, new furniture, new travel, new house. And these would be the codes that kind of lead up to the bigger theme of social mobility, if that makes sense.
That's perfect. That's absolutely perfect. Yeah. So anybody else want to chime in on this? So I might just borrow your social mobility. I don't think like if I was teaching a class, they would understand the trees and everything. I'm like, okay, we're not talking about the forest anymore. So what I want to do is kind of take us back a little bit on page 562, if you have that particular article out for you. So it says thematic analysis is a commonly employed qualitative research approach that entails the identification, examination, and documentation of reoccurring patterns or themes. It is a commonly employed method to interpret data derived from a range of sources, such as interviews, focus group discussions, open-ended survey responses, diaries, videos, and other textual or visual materials. How have you used thematic analysis in the past, and why do you want to employ this method of analysis? Just, I know Heba, right? So you mentioned that before. So, I mean, anybody else, how have you used thematic analysis in your own research?
Well, I did some research on, I was combing the web for statements about life on death row, which is something that I study. And there were quite a few of them. And so I would read them and then roughly classify them as far as I could. And I did it a few years ago. And then I thought maybe with this chat GPT, I could do a better job at that.
Mm,
So I don't quite even know how to use chat GPT yet. So I'm just here sort of to get oriented, to be honest.
got
But
it. Got it.
it might be helpful to me because I know there are themes there, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's a really interesting topic because I would never have thought about life on death row and
Right.
yeah.
There is life on death row.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So I do, I guess, also ethnographic work and have a lot of quotes from that.
Okay.
And in the past, I've just intuitively classified them and then tried to illustrate the themes with the quotes. But I'd just like to take a fresh look at it.
Got it. Got it. Got it. Anybody else? Yeah, go ahead.
I am currently doing a research paper which has been accepted to the International Communication Association conference in June, which looks at how Facebook frames itself. So we're looking at Facebook's own public statements. They usually have a blog, like the recent one, about their content moderation policies. So we look at it and we try to, we already coded it using NVivo. So how do they frame themselves? Like as they frame themselves as powerful, maybe not political, around elections time. So now we're moving into thematic analysis. We just finished coding the blogs. So I'm hoping this will help me, like using employ AI. I have never done it. I tried to use ChatGPT, tried to train it itself through a series of chat instruction. It didn't work. So
Wow.
see.
Yeah, I kind of think that sometimes chat GPT, you have to learn the algorithms to get the answers that you want. It's kind of like, so I'm in a Facebook group so I went to a women's college for undergrad, and people will put up, hey, just so the algorithms get it right, here's a picture of my cat. And I'm just like, okay. But I think it's more of like making sure that the algorithms, when you're putting in words, that it's chat GPT or any GPT is trying to learn you as you're trying to learn it. Yeah. So everybody's shaking their
Mhm.
Okay.
yeah. Latoya, what are your thoughts?
It's definitely trying to learn you as it's trying to learn it, because it knows me. If I type into Chat GPT, who am I? It tells me you are a public health professor who teaches multicultural health courses and you are interested in DEI. And it tells me all the things that I teach. Absolutely. It tells me all of the things that I teach. Yes.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
I need to rub elbows with you so that then actually I'll find out more stuff about myself on ChatGPT.
So I use it a lot to do research for my courses and ask discussion board questions and that type of stuff. So when I type in who am I, it tells me you are a college professor, and try it, and it definitely will kick back based on the things that you're telling it.
Okay.
Wow.
All right.
Wow.
So I haven't
I'm
been
gonna have to
doing
get you
any
in there.
studies, right? So I haven't been focusing on any studies because I've just been grading. I haven't had time to sit and work on a paper. But in the summer when I do, I take it that it would probably say you are now a researcher and you are you are studying women's health, and so yeah, it definitely picks up on who you are. Absolutely.
Wow.
Okay.
Yeah, it definitely is this it has to learn you. It's like a child in a sense. I mean, I don't have children for the record, but I feel like I've been around kids enough. And so I feel like it's kind of like a child. You have to kind of say, here's information about me. And did you learn anything about me today or something like that? So really great. I think the next question that I had, and I have like a series of questions, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna prepare for this little journal talk today. So my next question is overall, on page 563, it says, overall, thematic analysis plays a significant role in producing comprehensive and contextual informed knowledge that can be utilized to advance theory, policy, and practice. And I will say, I was a little surprised that this author actually mentioned policy and practice. And so, again, back to everybody's research, how have you used thematic analysis to advance theory, policy, and practice? What was the result of using thematic analysis to challenge the status quo in your field? You know, and so I guess I'll start with me. Like in my research background, I actually talk about Black women in swimming. And again, I haven't used ChatGPT for this particular topic yet, but I am interested in saying, okay, like getting more Black women into the water, doing learn to swim lessons, talking about accessibility, talking about hair, talking about all these things, and then trying to be like, okay, hair is something that we do talk about in practice in the water. So how can I really push more policy and getting more people into the water swimming, noting that we have all these barriers? Now I'll back up and say the same thing for you. You know, being the sense that we're at American University, I see it as a very highly like political science school. Like how have you used that research to really push policy changes or change, if you have?
Well, there's a certain distinctive cruelty to life under a sentence of death, right? So I've tried to use that cruelty as a way to make an Eighth Amendment argument against the death penalty. So that's, I guess, a policy, you know. Also to suggest reforms. But I haven't used the Chat GPT yet. I'm going to have to, I should learn that first. I'm just sort of aware that it's a very powerful tool. So.
Yeah. And there's more than just Chat GPT. There's a bunch of other GPTs out there that people will, you know, you can use. I know with, what is it, Copilot on Microsoft Word, I mean, or Microsoft products. I haven't used Copilot yet, but there's other types of GPTs that are out there, or AI.
If I'm not up to speed here, I don't want to deter other people from talking, but can you take an article with a lot of quotations in it and just have ChatGPT read it, so to speak, and say what's in there? No? Okay. Okay. That's
I mean, you can technically, but it's not, the result is not going to be good.
okay. What about the interviews themselves? If you have, say, a string of interviews all in Word, the program Word.
You mean, can you pull the themes out of that?
Yeah, I did the interview, so I have an opinion on the themes, but I if there's a tool that would give me another set of thoughts on that, it might be helpful.
So Hiba, you're shaking your head, yes.
I mean, yes, I mean, I've been trying to I think what helps me the most in AI is organizing ideas.
Okay.
I think that's what AI is really good at, but there are a lot of like pitfalls that they kind of like AI is capable of making up sources, for example, that do not really exist. Yeah. And I talk to my students about that all the time, that you have to be able to like understand and be very intentional about the way, as we said, algorithms are, and this is something that I personally write about as an anthropologist of like the digital world. I write about how, for example, algorithms are a socio-political actor that kind of reproduce you as much as you reproduce them, which like what you guys have been talking about since the beginning. So it's very important to be intentional to actually train the AI on the ways you want this data analysis to go.
Okay.
Or put what you want to say into it and then direct it. But in terms of analyzing data from a raw form,
Yeah.
I'm very skeptical so far.
Okay. All right. Well, I haven't done that yet, but I was hoping to do it.
I'm going to agree with Hiba on this one. Like, you have to be very careful. I mean, and in this particular article, it does talk about some of the risks, you know. So what I did was in vivo, there's like a practice example of interviews and whatnot. And what I did was I downloaded one of the interviews I read the interview before, but I downloaded it and then uploaded it into ChatGPT just to see, if it came up with the same themes that I came up with or the codes. Let me start with codes and the overarching themes. And some of them were kind of like, okay, like we're on the same page. And then some of them I was like, no, that's
Okay.
not what I was looking for.
All right. All right.
So
So this
yeah.
is not a magical tool in that sense.
No, I mean, we still
Right.
have to do as qualitative researchers, we still have to do some work.
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, I was just hoping it would be a starting point and then I would work within that framework, but it sounds like you have to have the framework kind of set to orient the program.
I mean, personally, that's how I feel because it can take you to a lot of different places because it did not read what you have read. It does not have the context that you have.
Right, right,
So it's
right.
either you have to work with it to kind of make it know everything that you know, which is, I feel like it's impossible at this point, at least. Um, or set the stage of like, this is the framework we're working with. This is the analytical lens we're working with. For example, I'm teaching this class called Feminist Research and Methodologies.
Wow.
So I teach it at SIS, and it has to be, I have to tell ChatGPT that I'm working from a feminist lens and a feminist critical lens,
Hmm.
so I can guide them on what type, like how do I think about these things rather than what do they think about these things. And yeah, I think setting up the stage for like what analytical lens are you using or what like methodology are you using to kind of contain AI in a place that kind of produces knowledge similar to what would you produce without AI. I don't know if that makes any sense.
It does, it does. How does it get to know who I am? Do I have to give it things I've written and then it reads them and gets a sense of
Apparently, ChatGPT knows Latoya.
It just picks up on the things that you put in over time. So
Okay, okay.
I ask a lot of questions based on the things that I teach. So I ask a lot of questions based on nutrition. I ask questions I teach multicultural health. So I ask a lot of questions based on like DEI, health policy, health disparities. So
Okay.
it would tell me that you teach multicultural health, or you're
Oh, I see.
interested in
I see.
culture and
Yeah.
health disparities. And
How do you decide which AI program to use, or do you use several? You said there's more than chat. I just only knew about Chat GPT. That's what I heard about. But there are others, you're saying.
Yeah, there are others, and I don't know them all.
Okay.
So yeah, do folks use other types of AI?
Well, you're doing ethnographic, Heba, is that how you say your name?
Yeah.
So, yeah, so is there any particular program that seems to be responsive to the field work you do?
Honestly, no. So
Okay.
far, I have there are a bunch of like other smaller AI that are made for research.
Oh, okay.
I can share a list. I mean, if you also like even Google AI for academic research, you're gonna have a lot of
Okay, I'll
stuff
do
coming
that.
out for you. There's like another one called Paper. There's a lot of things. So I personally kind of like use multiplicity of stuff and look at what they offer me and then make my own, like I can take a bit of this and a bit of that. Um,
Okay.
and also within Chat GPT, there are multiple like I don't know how, like smaller AIs. So for example, there's one specifically for creative writing.
Oh,
And
okay.
yeah, so
Oh,
it's not the general Chat GPT. Under Chat GPT, there is creative writing GPT. Uh,
hmm.
yeah, Otter
Otter
is,
AI.
yeah,
Wow.
yeah, exactly. A lot of people are sharing stuff. Yeah, there are a bunch of them. There are like a lot.
Okay, good. Thank you.
So, is it Curable?
Yes. Yeah.
So, can you tell us about the link you just put in the chat?
Yeah, the one I just put in, I use it mostly to read. It
Oh,
helps
okay.
me, like summarize a large text. You can even chat with it, like from a large text, you can ask it about a particular concept. It does a great job. It is very accurate. and I just focus on, particular concepts, and yeah, it just helps me explain those. So, and it is mostly free. I don't know if there are any resources that are free. You tried the ChatGPT Plus for $20 a month. It becomes expensive, so I switched to the basic function. I don't know if we have any resource at AU that are, offer free subscription and things like that. If anybody knows those things, please do share them. Yeah, but the one I shared, the basic, without subscription, it does its job.
Oh, wow.
Good to know.
Does anybody know of any other subscriptions? I've definitely used Otter. I will say Otter AI when I have meetings, not associated with American. And so people will use Otter AI and it just summarizes everything for you and says,
Oh.
okay, this person had this goal and this was the objective of the meeting and da 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 da. So yeah.
Right.
And then also when in Zoom, it has the AI companion. So it pops up once we're done today, an email will come to me saying, this is what your workshop was on and people said this. And, so that's kind of helpful for me.
Okay. All right.
So let's see here. So I wanted to, and I'm kind of going in order that I kind of put this all together on 563. The author says there has been an increased prevalence of the utilization of qualitative data analysis software, which has proven to be beneficial for researchers in effectively managing and organizing extensive data sets. Such tools enhance the process of coding and categorizing data, thereby increasing efficiency of the thematic analysis. So having said all of that, what QDA tool have you used, so qualitative data analysis tool, have you used to assist you in your analysis process and why? Did you ever feel that you were not immersed in the data if you were using or if you were analyzing by hand? And how did you bridge the gap between analyzing by hand versus using a QDA tool? Hebrew, you're shaking your head. You went for having the most reactions today.
I'm sorry, it's because I'm actively doing this right now, so I'm pretty traumatized. Because yeah, I'm finishing up my dissertation, so that's why I'm like
You can do it. You can do
yeah.
it.
I'm overwhelmed emotionally. Yeah, no, I have the same question. I have been all over the place. I go to in vivo sometimes, I go to my own notes sometimes, I get overwhelmed. Yeah, I honestly have the same question.
What did other people do? Have you used the QDA tool? If so, did it work? Did you like it? If not, did you do anything by hand? I will tell you now, I went from Hiba, I think I was in the same boat as you were when I was doing my dissertation. So I was at Indiana University and we had subscriptions to In Vivo and Max QDA. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna do my analysis through these. And the moment I did it, I was like, nope, I'm going by hand. I don't care how long this takes, I'm going by hand.
Sure.
So, I kind of learned, I feel like using a particular QDA tool, now that it's like 5 years later, because I graduated in 2020, like, I feel like it's either saying, hey, do you have an Apple or do you have a Samsung or do you have a Pixel? It's kind of figuring out which tool you actually enjoy using. Oh, we've got another person. So Alita is saying Otter AI for transcription, deduce. Yes. I love deduce for initial coding, hand coding for thematic coding, and checking deduce. Alita, I love deduce too. Not that I'm poo-pooing on in vivo, but
thanks. And I'm really excited. I was thinking a lot about this topic and using AI. I don't think I use it enough and well enough, but my work is looking at media representations of people with dyslexia. So I thought that could probably be a pretty good way to use AI to because right now we're just like going into massive databases, and just going through, these kinds of looking for media representations. But I would imagine that I could figure out using AI, because AI so well misrepresents people and things that it might be a good way to use it. I haven't figured it out yet. That's why I'm here.
Okay.
Latoya, do you use any type of QDA tool when you're doing your research, or anybody else? Or
I haven't been actively doing any research now, so that's what I am waiting this summer to, actively work on some research.
I hear you. Once the school year starts, it's like doing the research sometimes takes a back burner.
It is, right.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, like I said, before, for me, it was really difficult trying to figure out if I was going to use a QDA tool. Now that it's been 5 years, I'm like, okay, like I like Deduce. I think Deduce is very colorful. And on top, it's very cheap. And, I know people say, oh, well, we have in vivo. Why don't you just use in vivo? Again, it's kind of like figuring out which type of phone or platform you actually like. Is it something that you want to work with? If people want to use, I will say that if people want to use the cloud on in vivo to have their team use it, we don't pay for that. So that's kind of the downfall of using in vivo. If you have a research team, whereas in Deduce, you can put in for a research team and it's not, well, I was about to say it's not extra, but it's easier to do if you have a research team. But yeah, I will say I might be in the same boat as Heba, like feeling like very disconnected from the research. Because I wanted to feel, maybe it sounds a little weird, but I wanted to feel the words of my participants as I was going through the process. And so I'm like listening to them and I'm reading the transcript and I'm highlighting, and there was paper all over my apartment.
I can identify with that. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So I really enjoyed that process, but if I could have cut down on the time, I think that would have been a wonderful thing for me at the time. Yeah.
But
Robert, how do you do? Go ahead. I'm sorry, Latoya.
That's part of the job of like a qualitative researcher, like historically as part of the job of a qualitative researcher, to be like part of the data.
Right. Right. And we are the research instrument, as they say, like we are, as the researcher, you are the research instrument. So Kendra, thank you for coming. Robert, were you going to say something?
No, I'm interested now in pursuing some of these things, the creative writing category, because some of the people I work with do creative writing. These are guys on death row who use poetry as a vehicle of expression. And so I'm going to take a fresh look at that. It's through this sub program, I think you called it. Yeah. Yeah, because then I can also ask them what they think of it, right?
Yeah. I think it's definitely using AI or using a QDA system, it definitely it helps in analyzing your data. You just have to figure out how you want the program to work with you. I will say now our license, and I could be wrong, but our license with in vivo does not cover the AI aspect, because you have to pay a little bit extra with that part of in vivo, and our current license does not cover that. I found that out the hard way, because I'm like clicking on the button. I'm like, AI, and it was grayed out. So I finally figured out. I was like, oh, well, we don't have the AI component with in vivo. So, we've kind of been talking about opportunities and risks. The author says AI exhibits capabilities that extend beyond the confines of text-based analysis. It has the capability to handle various forms of data, such as images and audio. I will say, like, using the audio or the images has been really amazing. Based on the opportunities presented on 564, how would you foresee yourself using AI as a part of your analysis? And I think I kind of covered that. But I mean, Robert, you're doing poetry. I mean, is anybody else doing anything else? I've used images or doing what is it called? Artifact analysis. I can't remember the other title. But yeah, so are people using anything else? Maybe it's a different type of audio or doing more creative writing, like out there to use AI for their analysis. I guess I'm asking a methods question.
Well, if I could ask another sort of orientation question, I have
Of course.
a book of poetry by a guy named George Wilkerson, who lives on North Carolina's death row. And it's all in Word. So I could feed this right into these different programs, or initially at least, and then see what he thinks about the themes it identifies. Or
To triangulate the data, you mean?
Yeah. I
mean,
mean, this stuff is kind of subtle. So if they're good at poetry, it's always good to have the poet there, right? Because you can talk to the person, or write to them. Okay.
I mean, I think the way I would go about it is probably kind of trying to triangulate, like have the author figure out, like, hey, what do you think of these themes? I would have a set of themes and then themes from the AI, and just seeing if there are similarities right there.
Yeah, I had a student do an analysis of his poetry, and he thought she was very accurate in her views. So that's a benchmark, maybe. Okay. Well, thank you. That's all I had there.
Yeah. Brett says podcasts, but my co-author is leading. Okay. Oh, Shagun, you're saying just you didn't receive the article that we're reading from. I can send that to you probably a little later. I can't do two-term teams screens and stuff, so I'll have to send that to you later. Yeah, Moya, thank you for coming. Go ahead, Hiba. What were you going to say?
Yeah, first of all, Robert, your work sounds fascinating, and I really would love to attend a presentation or something to know more about your work for sure. I also want to say that because part of my I wrote a chapter that hopefully is about to be published in a book that about digital ethnographic tools. That's what I wrote. I'm writing about digital ethnography as a pathway for as a fugitive method, as pathway for exiled voices, especially researchers working in authoritarian settings like myself. I work primarily on the Arab world. And one of the added layer of complexity for data analysis for me is most of my research and interviews and ethnographic observations are in Arabic. So and I'm a native Arabic speaker, but AI does not really work that well in Arabic at all. So that's definitely another layer that I have been trying to get through it. But one of the things that's helping me is relying on screenshots as evidence, as data, and AI is actually really good at analyzing pictures. So that's something, yeah. So you can put the screenshot, they can give you the alt text. Oh, this is a woman wearing blah, blah, blah. In the background, there's the blah. So it's very good at analyzing pictures and screenshots. I don't know if this is usable for anyone, but it's definitely very useful for me.
Fascinating.
Wow. Michelle, your hand is up. Go ahead.
Yeah, I have a question and food for thought on when we're talking about analysis and using AI softwares to put our results to try to analyze results. I wonder what people's thoughts are on the data being stored on these sites. I don't know if I missed this conversation in the beginning, if we have talked about this yet, but just when you look at the rights, especially we talked a little bit a couple of seconds ago about Otter AI, when you look down at the rights of who owns the information, they own that. And so I just wonder when you're on grants or looking at your research of that company owning your results or owning all of that, the rights to that, and how that plays into, sharing your work, or, it's not yours anymore once you've uploaded it. And so I just wanted to open that question as we're talking about it.
Wow, that's a really good question. Just to let you know, we haven't covered that yet. So what are other people's thoughts on this question? Thank you so much, Michelle.
Earlier, somebody mentioned how it studies us, right? So I give it a try and I put in, that prompt who I am, and it was very precise. It told me, that I'm a PhD candidate, and even the people that I collaborate with. So it does, really study us, and so if you give it like uh, things to analyze, I'm sure, it will be stored. And we are yet exploring the governance aspect, like the privacy aspect. So I think there's a lot of unknowns. So I would be, like, I'm writing my dissertation, so I would be very, very skeptical that my data would be protected, that, somebody else somewhere else, by accident, putting similar prompts wouldn't get the results that I'm, collecting and working in. Then you would kind of face, probably allegations of, plagiarism, or, not having an original idea, at least because you wouldn't copy paste it. But again, I'm really very skeptical about, data ownership, privacy issues. So it is very useful, but we are yet, there's a lot of unknowns, which really is unsettling. So I personally wouldn't trust it to, store my data.
Yeah, but I push back on that a little bit because I feel like it isn't unknown. We do know it is, like, we know for a fact, if you look in the fine print, it does say that they own the rights to any information. So that's my whole thing of, like, if we're trying to use these services and we're uploading results, like, that's a huge piece of your findings, like, especially if you're on a big grant on this, or you have to publish certain things, of they own that. Like, you are not the PI anymore, in a sense, because they own the rights to your work.
Wow.
Yeah, I think that's kind of one of the risks you take, in by using an AI component or a GPT component. I think if I were in those shoes, I would probably go back to the person who's providing the grant and be like, hey, can I do this? Is it possible for analyzing the data, or helping me to analyze the data, use this component? I know when there's another group that I'm a part of, and I pose a very similar question, and the response was, as long as you cite the program, we were safe. And I'm like, but I'm still concerned about the fact that my research is out there. So what do I do now?
Yeah.
I would honestly suggest, I don't know if you guys, like, at the center, I think this is a bigger question. Like, I agree, this is a very big question on using digital platforms in general. And there are a lot of people who are working on digital rights and data protection, and what people are talking about, digital self-determination and all of these things right now. So maybe we can, like, I don't know, invite a guest speaker who is in digital safety space to talk to us about what are our options, because I don't think we have a lot of options against those platforms, unfortunately.
That does seem very important to people, especially doing doctoral research, right? Because that's research that you'll be using for, a good chunk of your career. What if you're working with stuff that's already copyrighted? So let's say that someone's creative writing, right? It's already out there and you want it analyzed. Does it have a claim to it then, do you think? Well, you'd have to speak to the guest speaker, I guess, if we get one.
Yeah, there's a case, a pending court case, which will probably, answer some of our questions. New York Times is suing this giant company. They are already, facing a lot of legal bills, but they claim, New York Times, there is their work that is being, used as a training data for some of the responses. So they are claiming copyright. So if they are successful in arguing that, then all people, all other copyright owners whose book, whose, writing has been used as a training data, then they would claim ownership, which
Oh.
means, yeah. So that's one of the reasons why,
Boy.
then we will know that also when we put in our information, if it is used as a training data for somebody else's response, we can claim ownership. But as it stands now, they simply used all available text
Yeah.
as a training data, and they say, oh, we don't own it. We are actually using it to train the system. But if New York Times is successful, it could be a game changer. We will know. We will soon know, unless they run out of money and exit the court case.
Oh, okay. All right.
But I still think there's a clause in there of them like owning some. I have to look further into it because I know like for sites like Grammarly, for example, like if you wrote the paper and you upload it, so technically that's your work, but then they have it written in their software that they own it after it's uploaded. So I don't know if anybody's aware of that, but yeah, if your students are uploading it, it's not their work anymore after it's been uploaded to Grammarly. Because technically in the fine print of Grammarly, they own that the work after that. And so I do wonder, even if it's copyrighted, if there's some workaround, because I know these AI companies are trying to protect and have like any information that they own it just so they know what's coming in there. So I wonder like fine print of some of these other services and what that looks like.
Okay.
Got a lot of stuff going on in the chat here. I just want to acknowledge Wendy saying that Regina Curran here at AU would be good for this. Wendy, can you tell us a little bit about Regina?
Yeah, Regina works. She's the head of the information services, or I can't remember her exact title, but she works here on this stuff at AU. So she would be a good person to come and talk to us about because the AI that we use here, the what is it called? The words I lose words. Yes, it's a closed system, so that's different than using Chat GPT. Like AU owns it and it's closed, so AU owns it. I don't know, but it's different. And she would explain what that means when you use it, what an open system is and a closed system. And some people have closed Chat GPT systems, so AU does not, but they use Chat GPT, right? It pulls from that. So there is a benefit to using the Microsoft version of that because it is more protected than, but she knows more about all of that. I mean, I use that a lot. I try to pull all of the data that would make it more Copilot. That's right. Thank you. But she's very good, and she's working on drafting we're not going to have policies, but suggestions of how to use, this at AU, and like what it does and how we should be interacting with it. But yeah, I think about this a lot, especially with research, because I'm in the grad program here too, as well as being a staff person. So with a half working brain half the time, I use colleague, so to speak, not to replace me, but to augment me and help me. I I do see it as a potential great tool, and I also see it as as something that has to be it's bigger and more unwieldy than I understand half the time, right? So I understand it's a very powerful tool and it gives away a lot of information. So I try to be thoughtful about that. But Regina is good at explaining all of that.
If
Yeah,
I
thank
can
you
add
so much,
to
Gwen.
when
Go ahead.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think because, I mean, I am kind of like obsessively following the news on OpenAI because I'm writing about digital self-determination. But I also understand that this is a much bigger conversation than us. Like, this is literally a cold war right now between China and the US over data. So we are in a digital cold war right now. I don't think we can solve this problem at this point. So we have to understand the limitations, and as Wendy mentioned in the chat, especially if you're doing ethnographic or qualitative data, don't mention names of your participants, like make it as anonymous as possible. Just go beyond your effort to like it's like you're talking to a security officer or someone that can literally jeopardize the life of your participants. So you have to treat all the platforms like OpenAI, and I don't know if you guys have been following the Sam Altman situation. All of this is over a ChatGPT using pirated data from data pirates in China. So this is the level that we're talking about in terms of data breaches and data insecurity. So just treat it as such until something else happens in the world, I guess.
Wow.
Yeah, that's a good suggestion. Like that wait and see where it because like I shared the news about the court case if anybody's interested. So their primary core request is for the data set to be destroyed. They claim there is a copyrighted material by Associated Press and others. So they want the data set to be, and it takes it back like 10, 15 years, like because it's the training data. It's as good as the training data. So I mean, I echo the point you made. Let's wait and see.
What are you studying, Wendy? You said you're in the grad program. Did I hear you correctly?
Yeah, I'm in the sociology program, the master's program, and I work on access to abortion issues. So it's like a lot of, like in terms of keeping things general and not specific, I'm used to that, right? So, in terms of what you were saying, I get it, right? I keep everything very non-specific, but find ways to use it.
Right.
But I do keep everything very, very general.
You ever know of Jessica Waters in our SPA, our school? She does work on access to reproductive health issues in the justice system. Yeah, okay, great. She'd be a good, lovely person to work with.
Wow, we just all have loads of information, but also questions
Yeah.
for how do we actually interact with AI in the future, or current. So still under the idea of opportunity and risk, based on the risks outlined by the author, how would you respond to be overly dependent of using AI as a part of your analysis? And how do we, as researchers, continue to demonstrate rigor and validity with the use of AI? Because I mean, I don't want somebody to say, well, all you did was put that transcript in AI and called it a day. Like, I'm like, no, I actually did the work. So how do we really address this moving forward?
For me, the challenge in my unsuccessful attempt to use ChatGPT was first it wasn't accurate, but even if it was accurate, I was I couldn't have explained how I got to those results, like the mechanics behind it. Maybe it's accurate, it had a lot of training data, it reached probably a better result than I would have if I, used some other way. But it's in research, we really value replication, right? Like if I give my data to somebody else and clearly document the steps I took to reach at certain, conclusions, somebody else reasonably should be able to kind of replicate the result. So if leverage, yes, we need to leverage all these cool new toys, but unless we understand the ways in which it, produces these results, unless we can kind of replicate it ourselves, then how are we going to demonstrate to others that, these are the steps we take? So that's how I would manage. If I understand how it reaches to those conclusions, if I can do it manually, then I would kind of include it. That's how my approach, how I would approach it, kind of.
Hmm.
I think it's an exciting tool to use as you were just talking about, as a check after the work has been done of as Dr. Wheats that I work with, part of what she talks about finding exciting in the data is what's not there, right? So in the check of like, what else can it find? And also, so you can look more for where the holes are, right? So it's just more of a check, right? More of another tool, another, I don't know, the being entity that can help you do that work instead of doing it for you. It's not to be looked at like that. It's just this other entity that's been created that can do it in a different way. I think another way of looking at it is it can also do things just for fun or creativity purposes to look at your research from different theories pretty quickly to see
Yeah.
that would look like coming from different perspectives at a much quicker rate than you could, just for discussion purposes or from vantage points. So that also, I think, is interesting. So and it can do that and have discussions with you from that point of view.
Hmm. Yeah, that sounds great.
I would have to agree. I don't like to demonize AI because the AI democratize access to a lot of things that people wouldn't have been able to access otherwise, especially if you're first generation, if you're not native English speaker, if you're not raised with like how to write and all of that. So I agree with Wendy. I feel like AI is a great editing tool, but I haven't really figured out how to data analyze an AI so far
Hmm.
properly. I feel like the amount of work you're gonna do to code and teach the AI is the same amount of work that you're gonna do with in vivo. So I don't see the added value so far in data analysis, but I can definitely see it in organization of ideas, in editing, in like kind of figuring out, oh, am I hitting my argument? Am I like, is this flowing well? All of these questions, AI is really good as a tool, but I still don't see the data analysis part as efficient as it should be, I feel. I don't know.
Hmm. Yeah, and vivo is labor intensive too, right? So
I mean, I think it's labor intensive, but I mean, like I said, everybody has their own feelings about using a QDA program, and it's whatever can, choosing one, like I said earlier, is like choosing a type of phone, or something like either you're an Apple person or a PC person or what have you. Like trying to figure out the best format it's kind of like looking at a needle in a haystack. You've got to figure out what's going to work for you.
right, right.
They do it better because I haven't used it. Is it better? Deduce?
But I mean, so I personally like Deduce. I don't know if somebody else mentioned Deduce in the chat. The reason I like Deduce is because number one, it's easier for me to work with my co-collaborators. And number two, I like the colors. So let the truth be known out there, like, when you're trying to code, I just like the colors and how they can like change and keep it whatever. And then also when you're working with people and putting the codes and the themes in there and to be listed, it's a little bit easier. You can also hide and unhide the people who are coding with you. I don't know how that works in vivo. Deduce is about give or take $17 a month. And they only charge you when you log on. So like I haven't logged on in about a week. So, and it's by month. So I'll probably log on later today or whatever to change some stuff. And once that's done for February, I'll get charged a month. Yeah. So, I mean, again, there's Max QDA that's out there. A lot of people who do mixed methods use Max QDA. I haven't used Max QDA since I was in grad school, when I was going through my trials and tribulations of getting my doctorate. So, I mean, again, there were parts of it that I didn't like, but that's like 5 years ago. I'm sure they've upgraded their system. Atlas TI is also something that's kind of fun to play around with. So if you are a grad student, like make sure that you're getting on the student discount. There's also like free trials, so make sure that you try out the free trials when you're out there. And that applies to anybody who's not just a student, but also faculty and staff who are doing research or what have you. So definitely take advantage of free trials. That's what I say. That was a long-winded answer to being like, go to Deuce. Thank you, Alita. So I guess kind of there, I had a question about, now I have to look at my papers. 565. So on 565, under thematic analysis via AI considerations and implications, this author has a string of questions saying, what exactly are we aiming to achieve by using AI? Is there actually a need to use AI tools in our thematic analysis? And which precise AI tools or programs that make use of AI technology should be used for our thematic analysis? So I'm going to start with the first question. And when I read this, I was like, oh, wait, I have to ask the audience. So the first one being, what exactly are we aiming to achieve by using AI? I mean, if I use AI, why can't I just go by hand? I mean, I think that would be my automatic assumption, but also I don't, like somebody said earlier, I don't want to demonize using AI, so how, what exactly, if you're using AI, what are you using it for?
I would say time, like to cut the time back that you would spend on doing a specific task in your research, to get back to do it for something else, or to go deeper in the project or connect with somebody in person. But just to get that kind of personal time spending on one specific thing as a researcher, you can get that back to do more.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Do you find that I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think for me, it is I have found that I use AI to make sure that I understand what I'm doing. So I can explain what I'm doing to people that I'm doing the research with and in the communities I'm doing it in, because that is where the biggest gap has been in the work before I came back to school, is that there's a language explanation gap, that people don't know how to explain things. And I know why, but it's like, so there's like a translation thing going on. Otherwise, I mean, it does make things more efficient, but it really helps me understand on a fundamental level how to talk about it and how to get it in my mouth, in my heart, and out of my head. Is important to me.
Yeah,
that sounds right to me.
So I think we've already talked about which AI tools or programs make AI technologies make use of AI technology and should be used for thematic analysis. So I kind of feel like we've talked a little bit about that. and I don't want to go down the list, but I think we had like examples in the chat of AI tools that people could use. So does anybody else want to comment on that question or maybe something else about AI?
I think I have to sign out, but I want to thank you all for your time. I really enjoyed the section. Thank you for your comments. So,
No problem, Robert. And I'll send a link to the workshop as well as a link to feedback.
great. Thank you. Thank you
You're
very much.
welcome. Thank you for joining us today.
My pleasure. Not sure
So,
I had that here, but okay. Sorry.
all good. It's all good.
I'm sorry, I also have to go because I have a class soon, but this was a really good conversation and I hope we continue it. Thank you so much.
Definitely. You're welcome, Eva. Have a good one. So do y'all think that we're expecting too much from AI? Like, are we expecting it to save the world or something? Like, what? I mean, are we really expecting too much from, or are we overly inundated with this idea that AI will definitely solve all of our problems, or are we being cautiously optimistic, as a friend of mine would say?
I took my compressive exam almost a year ago, and basically that was the question. That was the question. There's a really nice book about AI, Atlas of AI, and they pulled a quote from that book, which basically I'm paraphrasing here. It said, AI is neither intelligent nor artificial. And the question was use 3,000 words and unpack this using a modern day example, a technological issue. So I'm gonna just in a couple of sentences, basically state what I argued in that response, which is um, it has a great potential to be used as a tool, but there is this misconception, and it is marketing strategy that the technology by itself is intelligent, which it is not. And obviously, there are other concerns, right? Like power consumption, environmental concerns, data ownership. I focus on global south in my research. I do social media content moderation, and there is a lot of data that is being taken from there, as well as the technology is not really accurate. The content moderation research in my case focus on like countries like Ethiopia, Nigeria, that use local language in their social media discussion. And sometimes Facebook's much touted AI approves hate speech as ads. So, like it is not intelligent in so many contexts. So there is this over reliance and hype. So I think it is as good as, I guess, we make it, and we are not intelligent in understanding context, particularly when it involves marginalized groups, non-English text, and conversation. So yeah, it just that's basically what I argued, and that's what I would say here.
First, congratulations on passing your comps. I mean, yeah, I feel like this. I feel like, people are on this bandwagon of being ultrally concerned about using AI, and we need to understand how to not accept it, but just to be like understanding of how to use it in certain perspective, in certain projects, even if it means like explaining to our students, no, you don't copy and paste what you put into ChatGPT, which has happened to me grading papers. So being able to understand how to use AI. And I do like what you just said about it's not intelligent. Like we have to, we do have to probe it a little bit to get the answers or responses that we need. So I think the last question I wanted to ask everybody is about, having talked about students, how do we demonstrate the use of AI to our students in research methods courses to make sure that they are doing the work to not substitute their expertise and judgment?
I think teaching them alongside of the traditional by hand methods or like softwares that we traditionally use for data collection or analysis, alongside with some of these new AI softwares, but talk about the risks of them. That way they're not losing the original style of doing it. But they're understanding that as AI softwares are emerging, that this could be a tool to use it, but these are the risks that come with it.
Yeah. I think sometimes, I was teaching this class and I could tell from the way this particular student responded to the paper, or like the topic, the paper was not theirs, because I had seen previous previous submissions. And I just asked the student, I was like, I need you to be real with me. Did you use AI? And they were like, no, no, no. And I was like, listen, I'm looking at your Turnitin score. Let's just keep it real. Like, did you use AI? And they were adamant. And then eventually they came around the corner, was like, well, I did use it, but I only use it to generate ideas. And I'm like, well, let's talk about this, because there's a thing where you can use it to generate ideas, but then it's also plagiarism, And so just trying to be, not trying to condemn the student and be like, you know what, but trying to educate the student on how to use AI or chat GPT if they were going to use it, or since they did use it. And I think I kind of feel like that's where we are, not just, in the US or globally, but definitely at AU, we're trying to teach our students how to be responsible in using chat GPT, and, just trying to also be able to be critical thinkers at the same time. That's what I guess I'm trying to say.
I think it's difficult when you have a tool that, depending on the background that you came from, can literally help you speak academic, and appease a system and teachers, and like you may have ideas, but you don't know how to speak it, and you have a there that will help you do that. And I'm speaking as a student, like it came back to school after 30 years. It's like, oh my God, so to acknowledge that to students, to say like, you do have a tool that will code switch for you and help you speak to us. Yes, absolutely. And you don't have to do that. Like what we want to teach you is how to think critically, and like you can to think critically, and like we're not trying to teach you just how to do that, but that's the thing there, right? And here is how you can use this. Let us teach you and show you how we engage with it and how you can engage with it, because otherwise that's really what it's not the cheating, it's the talking, and it's the language of hitting the ground or whatever. But it's intimidating. To have a machine right there that's like, I will speak whatever you want to say to them and they'll hear it.
Yeah. I have to academically, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, like you said, Wendy, like speaking academically, like it's very hard. There's no easy way to go above it. It's very hard. It's very challenging. I mean, even if you're from first generation to, people who may have been going to school all their life, I mean, it's just difficult. I'm like, right now I'm in the process of trying to finish these 3 articles, And I'm just like, I haven't written in X amount of days. And I'm just like, okay, come back to me. I need to use my brain. Come back to me, you know? And it's just very difficult. So then instead of going to ChatGPT, I'm like looking at other articles, being like, okay, how do I find my voice again? You know, and I guess that was how I was trained was, and again, maybe I'm dating myself, but it's like I didn't have ChatGPT. You know, I was looking at other articles that I ended up using or citing in my dissertation to like help me, you know, but I think that's also, you know, it's not just using ChatGPT. You have to tell or teach students how to read academic, you know, articles, you know. So I mean, I think that comes to back to us as educators. You know, we have to go back to the basics of being able to teach. I'm not saying anybody's not doing it, but we have to go back to and actually teach our students how to read academically, whatever the field is. But somebody was going to say something before I jumped in.
Oh yeah, I was just gonna say, Wendy, you talked a little bit about wanting to be able to communicate and using a tool to communicate. And I was thinking about like a quantitative course, teaching a quantitative course and how that can be taught and how AI can be used. I think about, I don't know if anybody's familiar with the software Julius AI, where it really helps analyze quantitative data and teaches you. So I'm thinking of like in those kind of really hard quant courses and statistic courses, how using it as a teaching method to be able to teach students that maybe traditionally quant was taught one person this way, but there's a lot of ways to understand quant work. And so how it could be able to, you know, reach other people that understand things differently and not just this certain way or from a book, because you know, quant work is very specific on how you have to plug things in and the formulas. And so if you can use AI to explain that and use that in teaching, I think it could be give more access, especially to researchers. And when we're really talking about researchers, minorities, to be able to have that access.
Really great points, everybody. I really appreciate everybody coming to talk about this article. Definitely like asking questions outside of the article, because sometimes talking about an article can be a little boring. But I'm just really excited that people talked about their experiences in using AI, talked about the classroom, what we're doing as qualitative researchers. So I want to put out three things before everybody logs off. One, Nabila put in the chat the link for some feedback. I really appreciate it if folks will fill that out. If not, you know, I'll send it to you in an email as well. That's one. Two, if you are teaching a research methods class, something that we are doing at CTRL is called Faculty Spotlight. And definitely this is an opportunity for you to talk about what classes you're teaching, how best practices in connecting with your students, what text do you use. And so yeah, you can just look at CTRL and Faculty Spotlight. That's number two. Number three, I also do a podcast on qualitative research called Coloring Outside the Memos with my dear friend, Dr. Lizzie Bartelt, who's out of University of Buffalo. I probably need to connect her with you, Wendy, because she also does reproductive health. So yeah, those are the three things I wanted to talk to you about today. I really appreciate everybody coming out. We had about 20 people online at one point, so I really appreciate this. I wasn't too sure how this was going to go, but I just really appreciate you being here today. So please fill out the feedback form because I want to do this again. I see your lovely faces. Thank you, everybody.